Okay, what you're asking is kind of a typical question. Everybody wants to make sure that they understand everything, and that in fact, uh, that's actually one of the biggest hindrances is asking questions and being doubtful rather than just merely practice.
Mm.
Now, one of the things that we can say is that we can define a thought as any way at all that you can consciously spend a mind moment. All right, and some kind of thoughts would be discursive thoughts, language. Another one would be images. Now, in a way, we could actually say dreaming is images. Almost
Mm.
all dreaming, night dreams, nightmares, etc., are images, but we have images throughout the day. And when we get caught up in those images, we can call it daydreaming. Uh, but images is a natural way of the mind thinking. And that often what happens is people will have an image that lasts a split second, followed by a conversation or dialogue or discursive thought where we're trying to put words to what we've just seen.
Mm.
You can also remember the images directly. All of these are various kinds of thought. Another kind of thought is when you're paying attention to a bodily sensation. Listening, in fact, is a kind of way of thinking. Feeling itches is a kind of way of thinking. Feeling is another way of thinking. Any way that we can spend a mind moment, that's good definition of the word thought. Whatever we're doing, that's generally thinking.
Mm.
Now, there's something special about the discursive thought, the verbal thinking that we do. Now, that's a little bit different than humming a tune. And often when we hum a tune, we put the words to it, the lyrics, and now we're back into discursive thinking again. All right. So, because of the history of Tibet and because of the old Tibetan religion, when Buddhism came to Tibet, they picked up a habit uh, that's associated with what is called takas or images.
Mm.
And that when they're doing takas or taking images, then um, the way to do it correctly is to see the properties of that tanka, to see that deity as what's happening right now.
Mm. Yeah.
All right. Now, there's another kind of visual images that they do that's got a whole lot more to do with memory, and sometimes it's quite spectacular to see four monks sit down on the floor with various piles of various colored sand, and together they make a mandala, and they all
Yeah.
know what each other's doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there's no need for any words or discursive thought. That's all images and watching what they're doing, looking. Okay. So when we're talking to ourselves, that's actually kind of different than looking at what we're saying. This is why it's called right noble viewing or view. Now, normally we use the word view as a noun in the sense of a concept,
Yeah.
or viewing things off into conceptualizations, remembering what things looked like, um, and that's generally broken into wrong view and ordinary right view. So conceptualizations are ordinary right view, but actually looking, that's what would be considered a noble right view. And I generally mean then to change it from a noun or a concept into an action
Mm.
and use the word looking rather than look or note. So I notice something that you take, but noting is something that you're actively doing.
Yep.
So this is what we mean by right noble viewing, is to look at or really, really pay attention to what kind of discursive thoughts that we have, what kind of visual images that we make, the relationship between them. Okay, in other words, look at what the mind is doing in the form of how is it thinking. So you become an observer. It's all
Okay.
making a movie. You have the set, you have the actors, you have the director, you have the script, and all of that. But none of that means anything without the rolling camera. All right. And so, what we're going to start doing is seeing that most thought is the set, the actors, the dialogue, the script. And that what we're going to start doing is rolling the camera. We're going to start looking at what we're doing. All right. And the only time that we can do that is when we remember to do it.
So are you just talking from a mental activity, like what's going on in our mind? We're
Mm-hmm.
looking at not physical movement or anything like that.
Actually, when we get good at it, we bring in all four foundations, but we got to start someplace.
Yeah.
All right. Now, many want to start with the body and the breathing.
Yeah.
But the Buddha talks about the mind comes first, and he also talks about it in the sense of one by one as they occur. So breathing is not going to happen until you think about breathing at some level, especially if it's conscious breathing. If you're going to, in fact, start to control the breath, the long breath, you have to remember to take a long breath.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it goes back to the automatic system, which is actually part of the lymphatic system that's buried in the back of the brain. Okay? And that when we're bringing conscious breathing in, we're actually bringing it into the frontal cortex.
Okay.
All right. So much of the stuff that happens in the there's three. They talk about it in the sense that there's three parts of the brain. All right. The three parts would be the reptilian brain, the kind of stuff that an alligator can do: walk, open his mouth, close his mouth, swing his tail, beat his heart, that kind of stuff. And we all have that ability.
Yeah.
And then there is what is called the mammalian brain or the temporal lobe, which is where all of our language is stored, our ability to communicate. And they call that the mammalian brain because it develops with animals. And even though humans don't pay much close attention to it, animals communicate. They communicate a lot. When dogs are meeting each other, you see wagging tails, you see stiffening of the back, you see smelling of the butt, and all kinds of behaviors that is actually a system of communication that the dogs are having. You also hear dogs with vocal communications or sounds. I don't even think they've even recorded all the various sounds that a dog can make, from whimpering to howling to barking to barking happily, to barking viciously, growling, all kinds of sounds that dogs make. And then recognize that really what humans have done is they've just overly developed our growling, our snarling, our barking, our howling.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we've developed that very well in what we would call our middle cortex or the mammalian brain. But one thing that the dogs don't have, and if you look at a dog's face, you can see that in fact it's missing, and that is the forehead that the humans have that monkeys and dogs don't have. They have very sloped, but humans have a big frontal cortex. This is where we want to start spending more time rather than the very autonomous and automatic system of the reptilian brain, and start observing instead what the reptilian brain and the mammalian brain are doing.
Mm.
All right. So it's a little complicated about where visual images are stored, and normally they talk about it as in the cerebellum. Now, the funny thing is that the cerebellum is not up front, it's in the back, but it is an attachment to the reptilian brain, such that a cerebellum is not very big on many animals, but on the humans, we've got a great big cerebellum, which means that we can remember a lot of stuff, recreate images a lot, etc., like this. So, actually, many people think in colors. In fact, numbers have colors for a lot of people. Often green is associated with the number 5.
Okay, I've never heard that before.
All right, so if we begin to observe, we can see what kind of thoughts that we're having, and then we're going to put a kind of judgment on there in a yes or no position, in the sense of, is this thought worth having, or can I improve it?
Yeah.
And most of the thoughts that we have, most of the verbal dialogue that we have, actually verbal diarrhea that we have, is not worth having. Also, almost all of the language and all the words that we use, we've been using for years. We're quite into the habit of using words and language the same way that we did when we were a child, and that much of the ways that we learned as a child, we learned it from an adult. And so we're very, very bound by our habits.
Yeah.
And so beginning to see those habits by looking. So we can look and we can see the habits. We can look and see the discursive thought. We can see whether that stuff is wholesome or not. And this is the beginning of the skill of right noble view or viewing, is to be able to see what we're doing. And then the next one, which is a much important one that's missed most often in Buddhism, is what we mean by right noble effort, that once we see what we're doing, we have a choice to change it.
Yeah. Okay.
And so this is really what our practice is to remember to really look at what we're doing, because only then do we have a choice. Now that looking continues on if we're skilled at it, but normally the beginning student, they do something like see what they're thinking is unwholesome, have a wholesome thought, and then immediately follow that with another unwholesome thought.
Yeah.
Follow that with another unwholesome thought. And that what we need to practice is to have one wholesome thought after another to begin to sustain it. So we have two ideas then, or two ways of looking at it. One is to apply the mind, or starting to look, and the other one is to sustain it, or to continue to look. Because if we can apply the mind and then sustain the mind in the wholesome, then several things begin to happen all around the word sukha. Now, the word sukha actually is a feeling, and the feeling is a feeling of safety and security. In fact, you could say that almost all human behavior is predicated on one little kind of a switch, and that switch is actually held in a place called the amygdala, which is in the back of the throat, about eye level, and right in mid level here. And the surprising thing is that it's very close to the throat,
Mm.
which means if we start breathing long and slow, we're actually massaging this amygdala. Now, this amygdala is actually the source of fear.
Okay.
And that if we're massaging it correctly, that means is that it's relaxed and it's not producing the chemicals associated with fear. So the amygdala gives messages to the limbic system, which is the uh, pituitary and pineal glands, which are both located in the back of the head, that are hardwired to the adrenaline gland,
Mm.
chemically hardwired to it. So,
Okay.
if we can, in fact, keep having happy, wholesome thoughts, then the amygdala will settle down, take a rest, and we can come out of our fears and start to feel safe and secure. We can actually talk ourselves into feeling safe and secure, basically because we generally talk ourselves into fear in the sense of what could go wrong, what aboutism, and that what can go wrong can be either a visual, it can be a discursive thought, it can be any of those kind of things. So let's look at it from two different perspectives. In one of them is fear based. If there is fear, then that will bring on stress, anxiety, frustration, anger, a sense of loss, um, grief, sadness, that whole realm of stuff that's associated with fear. But if we can start to practice wholesome thoughts and subside that amygdala, then we can begin to have thoughts that are associated with feeling safe and secure and comfortable. And now let's look at some of the feelings that are associated with the lack of fear, which would in fact be safe, secure, comfortable, joyful, happy, enjoyment, satisfaction, all of that kind of stuff. Now, if you look at it from the Buddhist perspective, the Buddha says that there are, he only teaches one thing, and that is dukkha, dukkha, nirodha, which is in a way then associated with dukkha or stress or being dissatisfied, always has an element of fear in it. And when we come out of the fear onto the other side, then that's dukkha nirodha, the end of dukkha, and it has the quality of satisfaction or everything is okay.
Mm. Yep.
Now, we generally make the dangers, we make up the problems. It can be said that 99% of all the human problems never actually happened. They were made up in the mind. And the
Yeah.
other part of it is that all those problems that do occur is because we made it up and made it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I'm afraid of that guy, I'm going to take offense. I'm going to beat him up before he beats me up. And now we've got a fight. All wars are preemptive strikes based upon if I don't get him, he'll get me.
Yeah.
In fact, I've heard it as a pollution of Jesus had a thing called the Golden Rule: do unto others the way that you want them to do unto you. Well,
Yeah.
the second part of that, the second verse is, do unto others the way that you want them to do unto you. Only do it first. Go get him first.
Yep.
All right. So if we have the kind of thoughts that everything is okay and everything is wholesome, then we can treat other people okay and wholesome. But if our thought forms and our systems and our feelings are that of fear, then what we're going to do first is go spread our fear.
Yeah.
So this is how we actually practice, is to take the right noble effort to change those kind of thoughts, be they discursive or images or whatever they are, into wholesome thoughts. Images,
Okay.
thoughts, whatever they are, they can be wholesome. So if you're a Tibetan monk looking at Tonkas, you don't want to look at Kali.
Mm.
Kali and Durga are the devils.
Oh, okay.
All right. What you want
Yeah.
to look at instead is the deities, the ones who were satisfied, the ones who have everything that they need. So if you have, let us say, images in the mind, then the kind of images that you want to have is the image of everything is okay. If you have discursive thought, you want to have discursive thoughts, or you want to actually talk to yourself in the sense of everything is okay, not a worry in the world.
Mm.
Okay. Also, with the images, we can actually image things as not there. An example of that is when sometimes I'll ask a student, do you have any alligators at your feet? Do you hear the pounding on the door where the SWAT team is breaking in? Do you have a mafia boss behind you? No, you don't have any of that kind of stuff. And so the lack of it is, wow, what a relief it is. I don't have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, there's nothing to it. Okay, and so having thoughts of emptiness, the thoughts of everything is okay, no dangers there.
Yeah.
And so this is a way of beginning to have the kind of thoughts, images, etc., like that, that are going to bring on that attitude of safe, secure, comfortable, which leads then to satisfaction. All right. Now, if we continue to practice satisfaction over and over and over again, we'll also have the kind of thought of, wow, this feels really nice. Wow, this is great. Or another kind of thought would be, wow, I can do this. Wow, I can feel good. Everything is all right. We begin to see reality, that in fact it's been okay all along. We made up those problems.
Mm.
We do a lot of whataboutism. What about
Yeah.
this and what about that? We think that if we go solve all those problems, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
The fact is, we're already okay. We don't have to think of those problems to solve. We're already okay. That's the reality is. And so, in fact, in a way of speaking, by practicing the Eightfold Noble Path, we're actually much closer to reality than we were when we were thinking about all the stuff that could go wrong.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So this is the way that we practice. Now,
Okay.
I've often had students, when I talk about this, they start asking a whole lot of questions. Well, what about this and what about that? And I keep trying to bring them back to, let's not ask a lot of questions, because questions are associated with doubt, and doubt is a hindrance to feeling good. And they think that, oh, I've got to clear out the doubt by asking questions. Well, guess what? Answers don't bring fulfillment. Answers is just, our questions and answers is just another habit, and so we're actually reinforcing our doubt by asking a lot of questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we really need to do instead is practice. This is why I talk about it in the sense of every hour, let's do some practice.
Right. Okay.
This hour is going to be a whole lot better off if I spend the first 5 minutes of it feeling good than if I finish this hour and go into the next one with all the problems and hurries and worries and frustrations that I finished that hour with. But if I can start this hour feeling good, then that will influence the rest of this hour.
Yeah.
And in fact, in 2 hours' time, someone who practices every hour for 5 minutes will probably wind up getting more done than the guy who practiced 120 minutes solid.
Yeah.
He's tired.
Well, that was the one question I wanted to talk to you about was formal meditation. Like, how much time would you recommend sort of sitting? Like, I sit in the morning for 30 minutes and sometimes in the evening, not every evening, but yeah.
Well, if you can do 5 minutes of wholesome thoughts, one wholesome thought after another, that's good. That's really good progress.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Almost no one can do 5 minutes in a row. And if they
Yeah.
can't do 5 minutes, why do the meditation teachers say to sit for an hour?
Yeah.
Because all that happens in the second, at least half that hour, is waiting for the bell to ring.
Yeah.
They get
Yeah.
dull. They're not watching their breathing. But for 5 minutes, you can remember.
Yeah.
The human
And
extension, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just going to say, so I've found with trying to like turning to wholesome thoughts or bringing up wholesome thoughts, I've found often I need to, let's say I'm in something's going on, I'm in a bad mood or something's happened and I'm feeling frustrated. I find that maybe I need to take a few deep breaths, maybe 5, 6 deep breaths, and then turn towards sort of trying to bring up the wholesome thoughts. So maybe breathing a bit first. Does that make, do you understand what
Yeah,
I
but
mean?
isn't remembering to take a long, deep breath, isn't that a wholesome thought?
Yeah, I guess it is. I suppose I'm thinking of it like wholesome thought, like thinking, rather than just breathing. But
All
I
right.
get what you mean. I get what you
Well, the
mean.
thought then would be is, wow, this is a good breath. Really thinking
Mm.
about how you feel when you're taking a good deep breath. And when you take a few of them in a row, actually you begin to lighten up. You could go so
Yeah,
far as to say lightheaded.
yeah,
Okay, there's a word that they call hyperventilate, and that long, deep breathing takes us not over the edge, but it takes us in the direction of getting a lot of energy into the brain through oxygen, oxygenating the
mm,
blood. It also has the quality of removing carbon dioxide and the other poisons. So we're now, because we're breathing well, we're getting good blood throughout the body. We begin to feel tingly alive, alert, awake through the breathing.
So can I ask a question? Why then don't more Buddhist traditions why don't they teach this more longer breathing, like to calm and stuff? Yeah, I rarely hear this taught us.
Well, partly because almost all of the meditation teachers do two things. One is that they teach what their teacher taught them,
Yeah,
and number two, they make shit up.
yeah,
And that's especially what we find in Western Buddhism. And the other side of it is the ones who are scholarly who think that they have to know every sutta before they ever start to practice correctly. All right, but someplace in the middle is that sweet spot of really understanding what the Buddha said and then practicing it.
yeah, yeah,
That's what we're going for here is that sweet spot of figuring out what the Buddha said and doing it, practicing it
mm,
over and over and over again to build
yeah,
some new wholesome habits rather than relying upon all of the stuff that we were taught by all of those people who were actually not very happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very rarely will I hear a student say, "Oh, well, my mom and my dad were really happy people." Nope.
Yes.
They cared about my happiness, but they didn't know how to give it to me because they didn't even know what it was. All right, but having wholesome thoughts, one after another, we begin to enjoy life. We have a positive attitude, but this is not the power of positive thinking because a lot of unwholesome thoughts are positive thoughts.
Mm.
And what we're talking about, in fact, is more real thoughts, something that's real. And wanting something that you don't have, and so having a mantra or something like that about I gotta have it, I gotta have it, I gotta have it, that's a positive thought, but it's not at all wholesome.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Okay. Yeah. So stuff like I notice I'm friends with a few Thai people, and I notice some of them are into this whole the secret thing where you manifest. You think about if you think about something, wanting something enough, you'll kind of manifest it in your life. Like
Hmm.
they have this, like material things.
Right, like a yacht.
Yeah, a new car. I want a new car. If I think about a Mercedes Benz enough,
Mhm.
one will
All right.
appear.
So that's a positive thought, but it's not wholesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. A wholesome thought would be, wow, I don't need a yacht. I'm happy enough. I can play in my bathtub. I don't need an ocean.
yeah, yeah.
And so this is the way, being satisfied with what we already have, because what you already have is real, and you're okay enough with what's real. But wanting something you don't have, that's actually a definition of being dissatisfied.
Hmm.
Okay, let's pursue that for just a moment. If I like something and I ignorantly like it and want it, then I'll have the thought I would be better off if I had it. Which means then that right now I'm not good enough because I don't have what I want. It also has, going even deeper into it, it would also say is that what I want must be good because I'll be better off if I had it.
Yeah,
And so we have that thought of yachts are good. The reality is, are yachts really that good? How big a staff do you have to manage that
yeah,
yacht? What about taking it and dry docking it and taking all the particles off of it and repairing of the engine and
yeah,
firing the cook and all of this kind of stuff when we recognize, hey, I'm good enough without a yacht. I don't need a
yeah,
yacht.
yeah.
Okay, so that's a wholesome thought. I don't need a yacht to be happy. A lot of people have yachts. Are they happy? Not when they see the bill.
True.
You probably heard this that a yacht is a hole in the ocean that you pour money into.
Yeah. Yes.
It doesn't matter whether it's a schooner or one of these big dudes,
Yeah.
a luxury liner yacht. But it doesn't matter what kind of yacht it is, they all sink in a storm. But here I am on dry land, just very happy. I'm okay where I am.
Yep.
Okay, and so having those kind of thoughts, I'm okay the way that I am. So going back to that point about if we like it, then we think that we'll be better off if we have it, which means now that we're in a state of deprivation in some way. I'm yachtless. Oh, poor me. What a victim I am. All of my rich friends have yachts and I don't have one. And yachts are good. Okay, so that's all of that thought process. Now we can take the word yacht off of it and say that girl or that house or any house at all or
Mm.
any car at all or any laptop or anything that we want that we don't have, we feel deprived if we don't have it.
Yeah.
But if we can have thoughts of, oh, I'm okay without it, I'm just fine. Now that's a wholesome thought. I want it, I need it, I gotta have it, I'll kill for it. Those are
Yeah.
all unwholesome thoughts.
So we can apply this to anything, right? Certain types of food, drink, whatever it is, right? Anything, any kind of craving that comes up
Anything
for
you
something.
want that you don't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so make sure then wise wanting is wanting things that you can have easily. And the
Mm.
easier it is to get it, the more wholesome it is. Like I want a good long deep breath. Well, here it is. I want a
Mm.
drink of water. Here it is. Now, if I
Mm.
say I want Johnny Walker Black Label, and I find that there's none for sale on the island, I've got to go to Bangkok to find it. And guess what? Even the liquor stores in Bangkok don't have Johnny Walker Black. Now I'm really hurting because I'm really deprived. I don't have Johnny Walker Black. Poor me. But I
Yeah.
never needed it in the first place. It was merely a thought. And that thought can be the label of Johnny Walker Black. In fact, that's probably what it starts with.
Yeah.
Not the whiff, not the smell of the alcohol, but the label,
Yeah.
the visualization of the label. I see that label, now I want it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the wanting it then is almost always expressed as discursive thought.
This is how advertising works, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what we can advertise to ourselves instead is, hey, we got what we need. Everything is already okay. And
Yeah.
guess
Yeah.
what? That's real. We really don't need Johnny Walker Black. In fact, too much of it is downright dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact,
Mm.
any of it at all, when I want it and I don't have it, is dangerous.
Mm. Mm.
And so, this is the real teaching of the Buddha. And we've talked about it in the sense of three out of the 8 items on the Eightfold Noble Path. Actually, we begin to talk about the fourth one, and that is that when satisfaction grows into the attitude of, I've got this made, I'm the boss here. That's the Samasankappa. The Samasankappa is an attitude, and we come out of our victim's attitude into the attitude of, wow, I've got it.
Mm.
Well, you had it all along. That's just reality. We're just appreciating reality.
Mm.
Well, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And so this is the way we practice. You can go take 5 minutes and say, wow, I'm okay. Everything is all right. Whatever comes to mind, you can say right then and there, oh, I don't need that. I'm okay without it. So having something on the mind, like a yacht or Johnny Walker's or a car or whatever it occurs, even thinking about your bank account,
Mm.
thinking about your stock that just went down today. Those are all unwholesome thoughts because it always leads to, I want something.
Mm.
And when
Yeah.
you want something, you're in a state of deprivation, almost by definition. But if you have the thoughts of, I've got everything I need, I'm okay, now those are wholesome thoughts.
Yeah.
So, can you practice that, Luke? All
I
right.
think I can. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That
Yes, you
sounds
go
good.
practice that. You'll be okay. Everything is just fine. Start
Just
having
got,
that attitude at least once an hour. I'm okay.
yeah. Okay. I like that. All right. Just got to keep the motivation, like got to keep
Well,
the
the
effort.
motivation itself is feeling okay. What other
Yeah.
motivation do we need? In fact, as we progress along the path, we get really, really eager. Where does that eagerness come from? The motivation is because we're actually getting the correct benefit from our practice.
Mm. Yeah.
And then we become completely delighted with our practice. Wow, this is so good.
How much do you think environment comes into our happiness, our, you
It
know, I
has
mean,
a
like,
great deal of influence both
yeah,
directions, in the sense that most people spend most of their time around people who were unhappy. It would
yeah,
be better to be off in the woods, in an empty hut, sitting under a tree, out on nature walk, where everything around you is just okay.
yeah. So
And
we're talking
then
about
being
seclusion now, right?
around other people
Yeah,
who are also okay, that will
mm.
help you to remember that you're okay. Everything is fine.
Yeah, yeah. I'm lucky enough. I live near a monastery that I go and stay at, a Buddhist monastery, fairly often, and I always come back feeling good, you
Hmm.
know, just from the environment. But I start working again, dealing with family, what all that stuff, and it doesn't take long before it kind of goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
you know.
once an hour, don't be in that mode, be in this mode.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right, you go practice.
Thank you, Dhammarato.
All
Lovely to
right.
talk to you.
Give me a call in about a week or so.
I will. I'll let you know how I'm going.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Uh huh. We'll see you. Bye bye.
See you. Take care.